Good day, children. So today from the book Snapshot we'll take the second lesson, the address. And you are very much aware what is the meaning of address. So the place where you live in. Whenever somebody asks you what is your address, so you tell the place where you live in, where is your house located. So that is called address. So here it is written by Marga Minko. And the characters, the main characters are the narrator and Mrs. Dorling. And I have written narrator's mother. Though narrator's mother is not there, she is dead and gone. But still the narrator speaks about her mother, Mrs. S. So the full name is not mentioned over there, only Mrs. S is mentioned and the narrator's name is not there, but the person whom the narrator has gone and she is conversing and she is, why she has gone over there, her name is mentioned over here. So now from the book I'll read and I'll tell you, and this is a very short story, but still I will divide it into two parts, because completing the story in one part, in one stretch, will be a difficult task for you all to understand. So I have decided to divide the stories according to the length, whatever length they have. On the basis of that, I'll divide the story either into two parts or three or four. It depends on the size of the lesson. So here the narrator, she went to Mrs. Dorling's house. She knocked at the door and then she asked, "Do you still know me?" When she asked Mrs. Dorling, when she opened the door, "Do you know me?" So the woman looked at her very keenly. Somebody, they come to your place and they knock at the door and they ask you, "Do you know me?" So you will just look at them, you will try to think over. So same thing Mrs. Dorling did. She opened the door a chink, means little bit she opened. She peeped from inside the door. I came closer and stood on the step, and the narrator, she climbed one of the step and she stood over there. So Mrs. Dorling said, "No, I don't know you." So the narrator said, "I am Mrs. S's daughter." So she gave her identification that I am Mrs. S's daughter. She held her hand on the door as though she wanted to prevent it opening any further. And she was holding, Mrs. Dorling was holding the door in such a way that it was clearly understood that she did not want to open the door for her. Her face gave absolutely no sign of recognition, and on her face there was no sign whether she recognized her or not. She kept staring at me in silence, but she was standing quietly and looking at her. She was gazing at her, she was staring at her continuously. Perhaps I was mistaken. So the narrator thought that by mistake she has reached that house. I thought perhaps it isn't her. So she thought, maybe I am mistaken, by wrong house I have knocked. So she thought to herself. The narrator is thinking this. I had seen her only once, because the narrator had not seen Mrs. Dorling many times. She had seen her only once. Fleeting, and this was years ago. And that time she was walking out of her house very fast, and that was long time back. It was most probably that I had rung the wrong bell. So the narrator thought that she had rung the wrong bell of the house. The woman let go of the door and stepped to the side, and then the woman came out. She stood outside and she closed the door behind her. She was wearing my mother's green netted cardigan. that that woman, she was wearing the cardigan that was knitted, that was green color, and the narrator understood that yes, this is the lady I was searching for because that cardigan once belonged to her mother. The wooden buttons were rather pale from washing. It had wooden buttons, and by continuously using and washing it, it had become pale. She saw that I was looking at the cardigan and half hid herself behind the door. And when she saw that the narrator, the girl, is looking at her cardigan, so she hid herself behind the door. But I knew now that I was right, and the narrator was now clear. It was very much clear to the narrator that she had reached the correct house. Well, you knew my mother, I asked. So the narrator said to the woman, to Mrs. Darling, that I know that you knew my mother. Have you come back? Said the woman. So the woman asked her, have you come back? I thought that no one would come back. And she was thinking that nobody would come back, and you have come. The door opened and closed in the passage behind her. A musty smell emerged, and when the door was opening and closing behind the woman, she was standing outside. The door was, because of the breeze, it was opening and closing. So the musty smell was coming. The musty smell, it can be soil, you can say, during the rainy season. These days, when the sun doesn't come out, then the house starts smelling soiled. So that kind of smell was coming out from the house. I regret I cannot do anything for you. So Mrs. Darling said, I'm sorry, I cannot help you anymore. I've come here specially on the train. I wanted to talk to you for a moment. So the narrator told her that I caught a train and I've come over here specially to talk to you. So the woman said to her, it is not convenient for me now. So she said that it's not the correct time and she cannot talk to her. Come another time. So she said, you come, next time I'll talk to you. She nodded and cautiously closed the door as though no one inside the house should be disturbed. And then she shook her head and carefully she went inside, closed the door so that people inside the house may not get disturbed or they may not ask who is there outside. I stood there, I was on the step. And the narrator, she was standing on the step where she was. The curtain in front of the bay window moved, and the curtain on the window that was nearby, it was moving. Someone stared at me and would then have asked what I wanted. And then someone was looking from there, as if they wanted to ask what I wanted. The narrator is thinking that, oh, nothing, the woman would have said. It was nothing. And if the woman would have asked her, she would have said, okay, nothing, no one is there, nothing, it doesn't matter, anything. I looked at the nameplate again. Then the narrator looked at the nameplate. Darling, it said in black letters on white enamel. So white color board was there. On that, in black letter, it was written Darling. And on the jamb, a bit higher, the number 46. Number 46 was written on top. The house number was 46. As I walked slowly back to the station, then after that, the narrator started walking towards the station because she had to catch the train to go back her home. I thought about my mother, and then she was thinking about her mother while she was walking towards the station, who had given me the address years ago. And her mother had given the address to her many years back. It had been in the first half of the war, and that was during the wartime when the war had begun. I was home for a few days and it struck me immediately that something or the other about the rooms had changed. And during the wartime, when the narrator came to her house for a few days, when she reached there, she found that something was missing. There was some change in the house, and I missed various things, and many things were not in the house. My mother was surprised I should have noticed so quickly, and her mother was surprised to know that the narrator noticed that many of the things had disappeared from the house. Then she told me about Mrs. Darling. So at that time, the mother told her about Mrs. Darling. I'd never heard about her, but apparently she was an old acquaintance of my mother. And the narrator never heard about that particular name from her mother. So she thought that she must be some of the acquaintance, the person whom she had known long back, whom she hadn't seen for years. And for years she didn't see, and after a few days the woman came and she met her mother. She had suddenly turned up and renewed their contact. And suddenly from somewhere she came back, and then there was again the contact between the mother and the narrator. Narrator's mother and the woman named Mrs. Dolly. Since then she had come regularly, and after that she used to come to the place continuously. Every time she leaves here, she takes something home with her, said mother. So the mother told the narrator that whenever Mrs. Darling comes to their place, and when she leaves the house, she takes things from the house. She took all the table silver in one go. So the silver spoons, silver cutlery, whatever they were using, everything she took in one go, means once only she took everything of the silver table spoons and all. And then the antique plates that hung there. And you must have seen that the people decorate their house with beautiful plates on the wall. The plates are hung on the wall for the attraction, for the beauty. She had trouble ledging those large vases, and I'm worried she got a crick on her back from the crockery. And to carry all these heavy things from the house of the narrator, the woman got jerked in her back. Mother shook her head pityingly. I would never have dared ask her. And when she was taking the things away, the mother said, I was very much afraid I couldn't ask her not to take all these things. She suggested it to me herself, and she gave me a suggestion by herself only. I didn't ask her. From her side the suggestion came that she wanted to save all my nice things. And she said to me that because the war is going on, I'll take care of your things and I will keep it with me, and if they are kept over here, they may get damaged because of the bomb blast and all, and then you will not have anything. So they will be safe in my house. Have you agreed with her that she should keep everything I asked? So the narrator asked her mother that time, that did you agree with her, whatever she said? As if it's necessary, my mother cried. It would simply be an insult to talk like that. So the mother said, if I asked her like that, then it would have been an insult from my side to her. And think about the risk she is running. And she's taking so much risk for me. Each time she goes out of her door with full suitcase or bag. So whenever she comes and she goes out, she takes a suitcase full of things or bag full of things. My mother seemed to notice that I was not entirely convinced, and the narrator was not at all convinced by her mother, and mother understood that. She looked at me reprovingly, and after that we spoke no more about it. And after that, the narrator and the mother, they did not converse about Mrs. Darling taking away the things from the house. Meanwhile, I had arrived at the station, and while she was thinking all these things, she reached the station. And while walking towards the station, she did not pay attention towards the lanes, towards the buildings that she came across. I was walking in familiar places again for the first time since the war, and after the war got over, for the first time she was walking in that place which she knew long back. But I did not want to go further than was necessary, and she did not want to think about all those things any further. I didn't want to upset myself with the sight of streets and houses full of memories from a precious time. And by looking at the places, by looking at the streets and houses, she did not want to revive the old memories to her. In the train back, I saw Mrs. Darling in front of me again, as I had the first time I met her. And when she was sitting in the train, she saw that Mrs. Darling was sitting right in front of her, as she had seen her first time in her life. It was the morning after the day my mother had told me about her. And it was the time when the mother told about Mrs. Darling. It was that time that she saw her again. I had got up late, and coming downstairs, I saw my mother about to see someone out. A woman had a broad back. And that day, when Mrs. Darling had come to her house, the narrator got up late, and when she came downstairs, she saw that somebody was being said goodbye by her mother, and she saw the broad back of the woman. Actually, she did not see her face. "There is my daughter," said my mother. She beckoned to me. And when the narrator came down, the mother, she tried to introduce the narrator to that woman, and she said that this is my daughter. The woman nodded and picked up the suitcase under the coat rack. She wore a brown coat and a shapeless hat. And the woman, she just nodded her head, picked up the suitcase, and then she walked off. She was wearing brown coat and she was having a shapeless hat. "Does she live far away?" I asked. So the narrator asked her mother, "Is her home far away from here?" Seeing the difficulty she had going out of the house with the heavy case, because it was very difficult for her to carry those things in the bag or the suitcase that she was carrying. So the narrator asked, Is her house far away from here?" So the mother told the narrator, "In Marconi Street, number 46. I remember that." And then that time, the narrator's mother told her that she lives in the Marconi Street, number 46. So this much we are going to study today, and I think while listening to the explanation, you will hold the books in your hand, because it is very necessary to hold the books in your hand and listen to the explanation. While I am reading, you also can see the books and do the reading and try to understand what is being explained through by me through the video. So that's all for today, children. Good day and good luck.